Welcome to a special holiday edition of The Intersection. New Year's Eve, everybody. Thanks for being here. You couldn't be any more live than this. I just came off of a Legal AF Substack live with a couple thousand people. I told them, look, I'm going to act like I'm double parked. I'm sorry. I got about 20 minutes. Then I got to head over to The Intersection for, the regular show. And I'm glad, there we go. And I'm glad you're all here for it. Here's what we're going to hit in a particular order. I want to talk about the really fascinating and perfectly appropriate yet aggressive posture that certain defense lawyers are taking when their clients who are targets of Donald Trump's retribution campaign, what they're doing to fight back against that, including writing a 16-page letter to the chief judge of the Southern District of Florida, sitting in Miami, a judge I know, Judge Cecilia Altanaga, saying that the Department of Justice is corrupt and they are corruptly trying to funnel and traffic a case over to a particular judge because they think it'll be beneficial to them. And that judge's name is, you can put it in comments, Aileen Cannon. And that the Department of Justice and Donald Trump is using Aileen Cannon through the U.S. Attorney Jason Reading Quinones in Miami to go after Donald Trump's perceived political enemies or critics like John Brennan, the former CIA director. His lawyers at Mayor Brown, I've never in 35 years seen a letter written to a chief judge asking the chief judge to exert influence, use their administrative powers to keep a case away from another judge because there's a corrupt judge shopping going on, which we all see. And I had an interview with, along with one of my colleagues on Legal AF, Professor Ray Brescia, with Mark Zaid. Mark Zaid, you'll see the interview tomorrow, the leading national security lawyer representing whistleblowers, people inside the Department of Justice, the Department of Defense, the CIA, the intelligence community, whistleblowers, and the like, who just successfully fought to get his national security clearance back so he can represent these people. He's also part of this Brennan group, along with others that are fighting this fight. There's 37 people in the intelligence community that the Trump administration is going after. Pam Bondi's already admitted it. She said just the other day to a right-wing podcaster, there's a vast conspiracy and we're going after it. And it includes the members of the intelligence community. And they're talking about things in the Obama-Biden era, like including Hillary Clinton. These are so old, you can't even prosecute them any longer. The Russia hoax, we did this already with lawsuits. It failed. But that Donald Trump does, and Mark Zaid confirmed this for me, because he's a target. He's on the Donald Trump said he should be sued, quote unquote, sued for treason. He agreed with me. Donald Trump doesn't care about indictments or convictions. He just wants to put these people through a process, extract his several pounds of flesh. And on top of that, a name and shame. That's all he cares about. That's what we've been watching. So that's very interesting. And then what did Pam Bondi do? Pam Bondi goes after Brennan, violates the Department of Justice manual and ethics codes every which way to Sunday. And in return says that he's a bad actor and so's his lawyers. Doesn't file a letter with the judge responding point by point to their allegations. Just goes on a right-wing podcaster who's associated with the Charlie Kirk show, of course, and says they're all bad actors trying to name and shame John Brennan. I got an updated Abrego Garcia. You're going to have to sit down for this one. New emails have come out. Shows the Department of Justice has been lying to a federal judge. That's my interpretation. We've got a new filing about Judge Boasberg's decision to, among other things, to conduct a criminal contempt fact-finding mission to find out if the Trump administration has been in contempt of his orders or not. That got blocked. It's up at the D.C. Court of Appeals. or the Circuit Court of Appeals for D.C. We got a Trump panel, Trump-led panel, but some arguments now made in front of that panel as Judge Boasberg moves forward to grant summary judgment in favor of due process and habeas corpus rights. I'll tie it all together. Speaking of lying, new reporting, another secret thing that just came out besides the emails in the Abrego Garcia case, Tom Homan back in the news. You know, he's that the guy that's the border czar, or as Saturday Night Live, I'm sure, would say, if you ever saw a picture of Tom Homan smiling or laughing, that's Tom Homan watching an orphanage burn down. He's the guy that separates families, makes people disappear, if you know what I mean. He also made $50,000 of taxpayer dollars disappear. And there's a new internal memo that just got leaked that it is not good news for the administration, nor for Emil Bovee. Emil Bovee is at the heart of two of my stories tonight. He's a current federal judge, appellate no less. But I have a prediction. You can put it in the time capsule. Emil Bovee should be at the top of the list to be impeached and removed for the actions he took for the 3 or 4 months that he was in the Department of Justice as Donald Trump's former and current criminal defense lawyer. We'll walk through that all during the intersection tonight. And then I want to talk about the latest efforts by the Trump administration to destroy a congressionally created bureau or agency. And this one being the one that protects people from predatory lending practices and creditor practices, protects consumers, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, created by Barack Obama in 2016, once headed by Senator Elizabeth Warren, has saved people billions and billions of dollars. Donald Trump's tried to kill it, along with the Department of Education. And when he couldn't kill it, and Judge Amy Berman Jackson issued an injunction in March, he figured out a new way. Tell the judge that the Federal Reserve is broke. Right. In order to win this case, Donald Trump told the world that the Federal Reserve can't pay its bills. That and so much more on the intersection. I'm glad you're here. Before I jump into each of these items, we have a couple of questions from today. Decia78 asked, are states attorneys general actively working on state charges for Trump's gang that will make presidential pardons meaningless? I mean, not as of yet, but there's plenty of time. The statute of limitations will not have run. It's just hard for the states to bring criminal cases unless those officials did something in their states that hook into their criminal law. And there's enough federal officer type case law that would probably require that case to be brought in federal court. In any event, I just don't, at the moment, I don't see that hook. But you're right about something else. The immunity for Donald Trump does not extend to protect everybody else under him, right? It's a superpower only he holds. And we got plenty of time on the clock under statute of limitations to bring criminal charges against. Why don't we make the list tonight? I'll kick it off. Stephen Miller, Russ Vought, Kristi Noem, Pam Bondi, Todd Blanche, Emil Bovee. Let's go to the press secretary, whatever her name is. That one. And others. There were 6 people in the Nixon administration, at least, that were indicted and convicted, including the attorney general. So these people that walk around thinking they have impunity are likely targets for the next Department of Justice. And that's sweet music to most of our audience's ears when we start talking about the next Department of Justice, which we hope will be and should be a Democratic president and a Democratic attorney general. So there's that. Let me answer one more question before we keep going. Peter Finn asked, if a president pardons someone, can they still be charged later if there's new information? Well, not for those crimes. And it depends on the scope of the pardon. Some of them were like get out of free jail cards for he could even figure out what most of these people did wrong that Donald Trump pardoned. So he had very broad pardon. So did Biden about his family, by the way. But it's not a unlimited diplomatic immunity. You can't kill somebody. So future crimes could be charged that are not the subject matter of the actual pardon if we can figure out what the subject matter is. But I'm glad you're all here tonight and taking time out of, at this point, you're taking time out of time with loved ones. And we got 5,000 people that said, oh, Popok's doing the intersection. Let me jump on. Let me say one thing before we get into it all. Thank you. That's the best I can do at the moment. I'd hug each of you if I could. We crossed our 1 million subscriber threshold milestone on Legal AF YouTube channel in about a year. Rocket time, one of the fastest growing YouTube channels. We just got ranked, blew away a lot of our quote unquote competition. And that's all because of you. We're building it brick by brick with you. That's free, no paywall. And we're 10,000 or 20,000 into our next million, which we hope to hit in 2026. And now we're focused on Legal AF Substack. There it is. Thank you, Ben. Not that Ben. Thank you, Mr. Perry, for helping us. Legal AF Substack. We've added about 30,000 subscribers in the last month. We've added 1,000 subscribers paid because I'm running a sale until tomorrow night. 30% off on Legal AF paid Substack membership, brings it down to about $6 and I don't know, 20 cents a month, $6.50 a month. And that's what pays the bills. That's what keeps, 18 hours of content on Legal AF. That's what keeps me on the air, pays for the editors, keeps the lights on, business model, all that. No outside investors, no paywall. This is the way we do it. All right, let's dive in. Abrego Garcia. Look what I got in my hot little hands. I've got emails, or at least summaries of emails we never saw before tonight. Yes, hot off the presses. Now, this order for Judge Crenshaw, the criminal judge, federal court, Tennessee, Middle District, it's been on the docket. There he is. It's been on the docket since the 3rd of December, but all of what I'm showing you here, and maybe Ben can put up page 5 or page 6 or page 7. There it is. That was all black. I couldn't see it. Judge Crenshaw saw it. And that's why we wondered a couple days ago when Judge Crenshaw issued an order canceling for now the criminal trial against Abrego Garcia for that human trafficking, and instead saying, why don't we have a hearing in a couple of weeks about whether the government can carry its burden as to whether it vindictively is prosecuting him as a payback because he's winning his cases in front of Judge Zinnes in Maryland on due process. Why don't we do that first? Yeah. Do we all agree? And he got pissed off, you can tell, now that we've seen the emails. I'm going to read them to you in a minute, or the summaries of them that he put in there. He got pissed off because the government said, oh, we could have an evidentiary hearing, but you don't need to hear from anybody in Washington. The Department of Justice in Washington did not make the decision to indict. That came out of the fevered imagination of the prosecutors in Tennessee. Sure. Yeah. Mr. McGuire, acting interim U.S. attorney, just on his own decided to go back to a 4-year-old traffic stop. Stop me if you've heard this before. And indict Abrego Garcia. And Department of Justice had no role in it. See, the connectivity between the Department of Justice, what we call Maine, M-I-N, Maine Justice in Washington, and the prosecutor's office in Tennessee. If there's no link, it's hard to prove vindictive prosecution. Because who's being vindictive? McGuire? But if you link it together, it's Trump telling Todd Blanche to tell Akash Singh, to tell Emil Bovey, to tell McGuire to indict Abrego Garcia, just as we saw from a interview that Todd Blanche gave on Laura Ingraham. There's Todd Blanche, in which he basically confessed when she asked him, well, we had a judge in Maryland who ruled against us, so we indicted the guy. I'm like, well, that sounds like vindictive prosecution to me. So let me start reading to you now from from our emails. Get ready for this one. You're going to love this one. And it's a timeline starting on page 5. Remember, Department of Justice told Crenshaw to his face, we are not directing traffic on the indictment from Washington. It's just McGuire. Okay. April 27th, 2025. McGuire in Tennessee receives a file on Abrego. Akash Singh, That's the number 5 in the Department of Justice that's responsible for administrating the 93 U.S. attorneys. He's a 32-year-old guy, recently convicted of a DUI. I'm not making it up. That there's an email requesting time to discuss a cooperating witness against Abrego being led by Main Justice in Washington. Okay. April 28th, Akash Singh, sitting in D.C., receives the Tennessee Highway Patrol report on Abrego. April 30th, 2 days later, this is the one that puts the nail in the coffin and proves for me that the Department of Justice is lying to Judge Crenshaw. Remember, he saw these on December 3rd. We just see them tonight. Emails between Akash Singh, McGuire, and Jacob Warren, who works for McGuire in Tennessee, regarding criminal charges arising from the November 2022 Abrego traffic stop. They're talking about indicting Abrego for the traffic stop, and the conversation's being led by McGuire's boss in D.C., Mr. Singh. There's no other way to read this. Singh writes, it's a top priority. Of who? Of Trump, of his boss, Todd Blanche. McGuire writes, we want the high command looped in. Aye, aye, Captain, following orders. Let's go to May 15th. We can take down the screen, Ben. May 15th. Robert McGuire writes regarding a possible Abrego indictment. Ultimately, this is the Tennessee guy writing to D.C. I would hope to have ODAG, they should be writing, the Office of the Deputy Attorney General, ODAG, eyes on it, the indictment, as we move towards a decision. While ultimately the office's decision to charge will land on me, I think it makes sense to get the benefit of all your brains and talent. I've not received specific direction from ODAG, other than I've heard anecdotally that the Deputy Attorney General and the Principal Deputy Attorney General, Emil Bovee, would like Garcia charged sooner rather than later. You just told Crenshaw that there is no link between Main Justice and the indictment. May 18th, Akash Singh receives an email and an update about the indictment. We're working on the weekend to finalize it. We'll get you a copy tomorrow or first thing Monday. All right. 2 days later, May 20th, Akash Singh requests a memo from McGuire about the case. And May 21st, Abrego Garcia is indicted. You don't think the judge is about to dismiss this case for vindictive prosecution and not allow it to ever be brought again? I got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you. Okay. We are close to the first vindictive prosecution ruling by a federal judge against this corrupt Department of Justice. And I am here for it. And I know you are too, for example. But that just happened. And that's not the only thing in the case that's happened. We've got Boasberg. Boasberg, I joked recently in a hot take. He's like, he must go to Les Mis and think he's like Javert chasing after Jean Valjean, because he's trying to bring to heel a lawless Department of Justice and President Trump about issues like Abrego Garcia and others going to El Salvador and being tortured in a prison. And he keeps getting stymied by a couple of Trumpers on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. But he moved forward. He said, you want to hold up my criminal contempt proceedings? All right, we'll keep litigating that. In the meantime, I'm still the judge in the case. And I'm going to find on summary judgment that other people, 137 of them, not named Abrego Garcia, who also got sent to El Salvador, but now got prisoner exchanged with Venezuela. I thought we were at war with Venezuela by Trump. Still have due process rights, still have habeas corpus rights. Now, they're represented by the American Civil Liberties Union. And you guys all know, or you should know, starting in January, ACLU is joining LAF, Legal AF, for regular reporting and commentary about their cases. I'm so honored for you. I'm taking the honor from our audience that they're joining us. And it's because of what we now represent in the community, in the marketplace of ideas, a safe space for law and politics to be discussed among adults without blowing truth or sunshine. So, Boasberg, it's up at the D.C. There's an appellate brief by the American Civil Liberties Union about trying to get the contempt proceedings back up and running while he issues summary judgment. and wants, in the next couple of days, wants a description from the government, a proposal about how to give those rights of due process to people sitting in Venezuela. He's all ears. And so am I. So that brings you up to speed in Abrego Garcia and Boasberg. And then I've got to talk about Tom Homan and the new internal memo that leaked today, along with Trump claiming that the Federal Reserve is broke. He already said there's a fool running it in front of Netanyahu during a press conference, referring to Jay Powell. It's still trying to fire the guy. It's not helping the economy. It's not cutting rates faster. It's just this abusive, bullying nature of Donald Trump. And Jay Powell is a bigger person. And Jay Powell, the person that Donald Trump appointed to be the Federal Reserve chairman. You may not remember that as much as Donald Trump. This is like a bad divorce, right? Except Jay Powell is the loving husband, and Donald Trump is the cheating wife or the cheating whatever, and abusive, no less. So we're going to follow all of that. 2 ways to help what we do on the intersection. Well, a number of ways. One is the podcast. The podcast is booming. I'm so glad I decided to tell the brothers I need my own show. I was like, I love doing it with Ben and Karen, but can I have my own show? In any event, all jesting aside, the intersection is doing great. Top 50 in new YouTube rankings. I think we're 56th or so. That's all because of you. I'm doing my part, but you guys are here for it, and I do appreciate it. And bring more people on. That's one of the things I've learned about this YouTube community and Substack community. How many of you bring on other people and are influencers in your own lives to expose people? Because, there's so much content out there. It's like when it's back in the old days when somebody would say, are you watching Game of Thrones? Did you see Breaking Bad? Oh my God, The Sopranos. Right? And you'd be like, oh, must watch TV. I must binge this. What should I binge today? But those days are over. And there's just so much content. That's if somebody that you trust says to you, hey, intersection with Popok, Legal AF, YouTube, Substack. It's amazing how many people will thank you for giving them direction and helping them cut through the jungle of content that's out there and find like-minded people, fellow travelers, as we like to say. So I appreciate you doing that for us very, very much. Find us on podcasts, like audio podcasts, just put in the intersection. Go to YouTube. You can find us on the Midas Touch Network. You can just plug in Legal AF MTN. Get us over to the YouTube channel. Help us on our next 1 million build. Maybe you missed the first million. That's okay. Maybe you were asleep for a year. It's all right. You're here now. The best time to do it was yesterday or right now. So let's do it. Let's do it right now. And then we've got our, besides our Substack, which I talked about with our 30% off sale going on until the end of this, till the end of tomorrow. We've got pro-democracy sponsors that support really everything that I do, whether it's Legal AF or on the intersection. And now here's a word from one of our sponsors. You know that feeling when your morning coffee is supposed to kickstart your day, but instead your stomach's grumbling, your focus isn't sharp, and by 10 a.m. you're already craving a nap? It's frustrating because the ritual matters, but sometimes traditional coffee just doesn't play nice with your body or your brain. And for anyone juggling a busy, chaotic lifestyle or trying to level up focus and energy, this is a common struggle. You don't have hours to research ingredients, experiment with supplements, or mix up different powders just to get a clean, productive boost. So that's where Everyday Dose comes in. It's coffee plus benefits, coffee with mushrooms, collagen, and nootropics that fuel your brain, support focus, and provide clean, sustained energy all day long. It tastes just like coffee, but without the crash, the jitters, or stomach issues. With ingredients like lion's mane, chaga, and collagen protein, it's a simple ritual that supports your gut, brain, and overall wellness without adding any extra time to your morning. Right now, you can get 45% off your first subscription order of 30 servings of Coffee Plus. You'll also receive a starter kit with over $100 in free gifts by going to everydaydose.com/legalaf or entering legalaf at checkout. That's everydaydose.com/legalaf for 45% off your first order. And we are back. I'm sorry that was so loud. It should not have been that loud. Did I say I have a new producer on with me today? Look how quickly Popok threw somebody under the bus. That's what we call a hospital pass. You go out long, right over the middle, and you end up in the hospital. In any event, we are back. Ben, I'm kidding. Let's talk about our last two topics today. Let's do the internal memo, which puts a lie to everything Carolyn Levitt, there's her name, has ever said about Tom Homan and bribery. For those joining late to the story, Tom Homan, yes, your border czar, has took a $50,000 bribe of U.S. taxpayer dollars by the Biden administration's FBI. What happened is they were targeting somebody else in a public corruption scandal investigation. That person who was close to Tom Homan said, "You think I'm taking bribes? You know who'll take a bribe? Tom Homan. Offer him $1 million, and he'll offer to channel contracts, federal contracts. You know, like much of our immigration and detention apparatus is privately owned, meaning contracts, and need private security forces, private detention centers. Yes, for ICE. There's one in New York. It's called Delaney Hall, among others." Private prisons, private fill in the blanks. You need charter. You need planes. There's one company in Miami that basically is ICE Air, and all these contracts need to be procured. So they went in September of 2024, 2 months before the end of the Biden administration, to a Cava restaurant in CAVA in Texas. And at some point, they pushed across a bag, a big orange or yellow bag in Cava, stuffed with $50,000, and gave it to Tom Homan, who took it. Now, I'd like to know how he reported that on his tax returns, because he claims he didn't take a bribe. So what happened to the bribe sting money? Where'd that go? And now with the new reporting that just came out today with MS Now, I feel like I have to shout their new name, MS Now. The reporting is that there was an internal memo, one page, that was prepared by the Department of Justice, who ran into the room in the middle of January before the inauguration and pushed it in an envelope across to Emil Bovey. Let's put up a picture of Emil Bovey, if we can find it. Emil Bovey, then the principal deputy attorney general. Well, going to be. This is transition time. He's the guy that's now on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. So Emil Bovey gets it, and according to people in the room, grimaced, although looking at Emil Bovey, I know if we can find the photo, looking at Emil Bovey, it's hard to tell if he's grimacing or not, but he grimaced and rolled his eyes, knowing that he had a problem, because it outlined the bribery sting that was going on. So what'd they do about it? Well, they killed the bribery investigation. I'm talking about Todd Blanche and all the lawyers for the Department of Justice. And then the Department of Justice told Bovey, there's no way this guy gets a security clearance with this sting operation on his resume. And so what they do, they had Donald Trump just grant him security clearance, which he's empowered to do. And if you remember back in December before the inauguration, there was a big hullabaloo, we covered it, about the transition team led by the incoming Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, and incoming Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, and they were not signing the presidential transition agreements, dozens of them, that they needed to sign under a statute, an act of Congress, in order to transition for the government. And one of them was the authorization for the FBI to do background checks. They didn't want to do FBI background checks. They wanted to use private investigators, which we'd never see the light of day. Now we know why. We're supposed to know whether somebody's a Russian asset, Chinese asset, is corrupt, besides the president coming into government. Put two and two together, you see the connections. Now, the internal memo and the existence of the internal memo and who else saw that internal memo puts a lie to things like Carolyn Levitt said during a press conference, which she defended Tom Homan. Let's play that clip.
These Caroline. So too on the Holman investigation, I mean, can you just speak to, did the president ask the Justice Department to close the case, and does Holman have to return the $50,000?
Well, Mr. Holman never took the $50,000 that you're referring to, so you should get your facts straight, number one. Number two, this was another example of the weaponization of the Biden Department of Justice against one of President Trump's strongest and most vocal supporters in the midst of a presidential campaign. You had FBI agents going undercover to try and entrap one of the president's top allies and supporters, someone who they knew very well would be taking a government position months later. Mr. Holman did absolutely nothing wrong. And even the president's Department of Justice, even Kash Patel's FBI, looked into this just to make sure. They had a number of different prosecutors and FBI agents who looked into this. They found zero evidence of illegal activity or criminal wrongdoing. In the White House and the president stand by Tom Homan 100% because he did absolutely nothing wrong, and he is a brave public servant who has done a phenomenal job in helping the president shut down the border.
All right, let me unpack some of that. First of all, it's a series of lies. The sting operation was after the election, not before. So it wasn't in the middle of the campaign. That's first thing, because they're doing their job, even with an election or without an election. The FBI and the Department of Justice, when they have credible evidence from a confidential informant that somebody's on the take going into the Trump administration, they have an obligation to follow it. So it took them a year to get approval and everything, but it was after the election, not before. Now, the reason they didn't arrest him on the scene is this was their mistake. They wanted to wait, thinking that I think Kamala was going to win. No, I guess not. They wanted to wait, even if Trump got in, that Homan would take a bribe, would pay off on the bribe and start sending contracts towards these undercover federal contractors, and boom, then they would arrest him. They didn't anticipate the Department of Justice and FBI would be so corrupt that they would deny the existence of the investigation and quote unquote clear him. Does anybody think Kash Patel couldn't clear a clogged toilet, right? He's going to clear, and Mr. Conspiracy Theory, they didn't clear it. And this internal memo indicates they didn't clear it. They had credible evidence that the guy, why do you think Emil Bovee, we got a photo of Emil Bovee. Why do you think Emil Bovee, there he is. You can't even tell if he's grimacing now. His resting face is a grimace. He grimaced and rolled his eyes because it was good news in the envelope, right? But again, if you want to remember, some people have been thinking, which guy's Tom Homan again? Yeah, he's the guy that makes people disappear and separates families and then laughs about it. Here's a clip of him half-heartedly defending the bribe that he took, sort of. Play the clip.
I know George Stephanopoulos is one of your best friends. Mm-hmm. He convicted you on television of a $50,000 bribe.
I didn't take $50,000 from anybody.
How did that get into the mainstream, do you think?
I have no idea. Look, there's been hit pieces on me since I came back to this administration. There's got to be 30, 40 hit pieces on me about how I'm involved with contracts and government contracts, when in fact, day one I came back, I recused myself from any discussions, any contract, or any monetary decisions like that, because I used to have a company that did consulting. So I cleared myself day one. What people don't talk about is I took a significant, huge pay cut to come back and serve my nation. And I'm not enriching myself doing this job.
Does this make you angry that they're coming at you this way?
I don't care what people think about me, and never have. No, because I know who I am. I work for the greatest president in the history of this nation, in my opinion, and we're doing the right thing every day.
Okay.
When you're all in jail together, that's what you can chant together. He's a liar. You can tell the tell from that was when Tom Homan said, I took a pay cut. Sounds like you took a pay cut and then you put $50,000 and a promise of more in your back pocket. I mean, I don't know why you're talking about how much you made and the pay cut that you took. That actually reinforces that you took a bribe. Well, I'm so wealthy I couldn't afford a bribe. I wouldn't take a bribe. No, I was financially insecure, so I took a bribe. That's what that sounded like. So what's going to happen? Nothing now, because the Trump administration will never admit defeat or never admit wrongdoing. We know that. Tom Homan will stay where he is But he's another person you put on the list of future soon to be indicted, impeached, and removed. So the power of the American people, unified as citizens, is greater than any one corrupt administration. As corrupt as this Department of Justice is, and it's the most corrupt in my lifetime and in history, we can remove these people. We can impeach and remove everybody that I've talked about tonight and more. And the future Department of Justice, again, the sweetest words ever known to humankind, the future Department of Justice led by an adult who is honest and independent from whatever the president that's elected, will investigate and prosecute these people for obstruction of justice, for theft of honest service, for lots of different things. I don't know about the winter is coming, like Game of Thrones, but justice is coming. The wheels of justice, it's a giant wheel. The wheels of justice turn slowly, but they crush finally. And we're going to see the result of that. It's not moving at the speed that we'd like. It's not moving at the velocity we'd like. But look where we are today. A year ago, we were crying into our fill in the blank, beer, bourbon, coffee, water, about the results of the election. Donald Trump's first week in office with 207 executive orders, and how far away that tunnel, how long that tunnel was with very little light at the end of it. And now we're counting down to the midterms. It's funny how time works, running in one direction. So let me, I've asked, let me see, is there any more questions that looked interesting today? Still looking. Let's see. Anne Letamaki asks, if an executive order is not legal, is it automatically void, or is there a process? If the illegal executive order is implemented and funded, who's responsible for the initial cost, like renaming the Kennedy Center and placing the letters? Well, executive orders can be challenged, which they are. That's part of the 500 lawsuits or so that have been brought by the attorneys general, the public interest groups, the Democracy Forwards, the American Civil Liberties Union. At the basis of that is usually an executive order. You know, you have 270 executive orders. You have 500 cases. There's some overlap. That's really where it's coming from. And other arbitrary, capricious, ultra vires, rogue, unconstitutional conduct. In terms of like claw back the money, I mean, I don't think that's happening. Could be restitution in a criminal case, but Trump's not going to get indicted for anything he's doing at present. As insufferable, heartless, and depraved, even lining his own pockets while he's in the presidency, and that of his family and of his friends. He's not going to jail for any of this. Now, it doesn't mean when he gets out, Mr. Larceny in chief isn't going to do something bad again and get indicted. But that's just him. An administration is not just one person, despite what the Supreme Court thinks. It's not just the unitary executive branch. It's occupied by one person. Really? We're paying for a lot of other people to hang around the president, if that's true. But all those other people, all those other people, like in the Nixon administration and deeper, can be indicted in a future Department of Justice. Let me end tonight with a new order that just came out today by Amy Berman Jackson, one of my favorite judges in the federal district court, and the federal court in D.C., in favor of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. That's the entity formed in 2016 by Barack Obama, President Obama, headed at first by Elizabeth Warren, to protect average American consumers and otherwise from predatory lending practices, credit card practices, bank practices, things like that, saving the American people and returning to them tens of billions of dollars. It has been a thorn in the side for no reason I really can understand of MAGA and the Federalist Society since it was formed. Let me just put this in context. Under Donald Trump, the Securities and Exchange Commission, which is supposed to regulate the financial markets, has had its budget cut by about 2/3. Its enforcement actions are almost non-existent. The Commodities and Futures Commission, same thing. Federal Trade Commission, same thing. So there is no regulatory framework. There's nobody regulating cryptocurrency, and the only ones left that get money and get funding are just tools of Donald Trump and his retribution campaign, like the Federal Communications Commission, going after media properties and threatening them to take away their licenses. We know where your kids, we know what the playground is your kids go to. If you don't play ball with us, things like that with Brendan Carr. That's the only way he sees utility and value. I'm talking about Trump now, to the use of these congressionally created agencies. So the only one that is out there to protect literally the consumer is the CFPB. But because it's associated with Barack Obama, we got to get rid of it. So first in March or April, Amy Berman Jackson issued an injunction, there she is, to prevent the destruction of that bureau while the parties litigated up through an appeal, maybe to the Supreme Court. Because once destroyed, it's not going to be put back together again. You're not putting Humpty Dumpty agency back together again, just like the Department of Education. So they found another way to violate her injunction. And they've been up and down with the appellate courts. And now there's a hearing on the underlying substance, a question of whether Donald Trump, the Trump administration, can chloroform the CFPB once and for all. Yes or no? Then up to the Supreme Court. In the meantime, let's keep it running, So they figured out another way to undermine the injunction. They said the Federal Reserve was bankrupt. No, the Federal Reserve was out of money. Why does that matter? Because the way that the Consumer Financial Protection Board operates, the way that Congress wanted it funded, it said that the Federal Reserve has to send some of its excess money to the CFPB, tie it together. Because, banks, regulatory, and Trump basically had his Office of Legal Counsel under the Department of Justice issue a phony legal memo that recalculated how much money the Fed had and said they were out of money. Oh, we don't have money. The Federal Reserve of the United States doesn't have money. So Amy Berman Jackson pulled everybody together in her new order. And she said, look, it's been obvious that, there it is, that Russ Vought, the head of the Office of Management and Budget, the architect of Project 2025, those are my words, has wanted to get rid of the CFPB for a long time. He went on right-wing Charlie Kirk show podcast in October and said, we're 2 or 3 months away from putting it out of business successfully, which she quoted at the top of her first page. And this is what she says in her order. I'll read it to you. I'll put it up on Legal AF Substack for you all to read. She said, the court clarifies that the claimed lapse in funding, we don't have the money, which was manufactured by the defendants based solely on the Office of Legal Counsel memo, is not a valid justification, it's on page 31, for the agency's unilateral decision to abandon its obligations under the injunction. Combined earnings, which is the definition, is not the way you're portraying it in order to create a deficit, in order to make it so the CFPB has no money. In other words, don't come into my court and tell me the Federal Reserve is belly up, and that's why you can't fund the CFPB. She said that's not an understanding that anybody's ever taken in the past, and it's yet another attempt, she says on the bottom of page 31, it appears that the defendant's new understanding of what combined earnings means is an unsupported and transparent attempt to starve the CFPB of funding, and yet another attempt to achieve the very end the court's injunction was put in place to prevent. So she clarifies, this ruling construes the scope of the existing order to clarify that the defendant's unilateral decision to decline to request money based on an unsupported interpretation of this law contravenes the preliminary injunction. So ordered today, Amy Berman Jackson. The appellate court's going to hear this case in February. Now, whether Trump in the meantime goes running off to go complain to the appellate court again, oh, Judge Jackson's being mean to me, or take some sort of emergency shadow docket appeal through John Roberts to the United States Supreme Court again, which they may, that will be left for another intersection or Legal AF or Legal AF Substack Live or Legal AF YouTube. And that's our night before New Year's Eve. I'm so glad we're here together. Ben, Mycelis, and me, we put together Legal AF as a concept in March of 2020. It'll be 6 years this coming March. We did not at that moment, I'm going to be a little wistful here. We did not at that moment believe that we would have a community, that we'd be able to build an audience, that people would vibrate on our frequency the way that they have, that there would be, so many different parts of the Legal AF ecosystem, that we'd have a YouTube channel by itself, with 1 million subscribers in a year, that we'd have a spin-off show like The Intersection, that the podcast itself, Legal AF itself, would be in the top 50 of all podcasts and top law and politics, that we'd have a Substack, that there be a Substack, that there is a thing called a Substack. We never envisioned any of that. We were just two people that were worried and scared about Trump and a possible return of Trump. And I'm so honored to have been with you and our mutual commitment to each other over the last 6 years, almost 6 years. It's heartwarming. It is eye-watering. And I appreciate each and every one of you. Our audience is like no other. I mean, if you want to look, we get an occasional troll. That's why God created moderators. Thank you, Cheryl and others tonight. But if you look at other, especially moderate or left of center type, progressive type channels, they get trolled mercilessly. There's just something about our audience that keeps the bad people away and yet allows a safe space for people to freely express themselves on a channel, on a Substack Live that I do twice a day now, on YouTube comments. And that's a beautiful thing. And that will propel us, that energy, that commitment as citizens, the greatest title, greater than commander-in-chief, greater than president of the United States, senator, congressperson, whatever, ODAG, PDAG, citizen is the greatest title that you can hold in the United States. And together, and the fact that we're banded together, we can do great things. It starts now. It starts with voter registration. It starts with campaigning in the streets to convert the hearts and minds of those people that haven't figured out that Donald Trump is corrupt. There's still a group out there. Even though the new polling says 65 to 70% of America reject Donald Trump, I can't even believe 30% still accept him. So we just have to keep chopping wood, stay focused, keep our hands on the controls, bring this plane down for a smooth landing at the midterms, and then another launch and takeoff to get us ready for 2028, when the most beautiful sound in the English language to date, the new Department of Justice, when that becomes a reality. So I'll be here next Tuesday with you. We're gonna do a early Christmas Eve or Christmas Eve version of Legal AF. I'll do it with Karen Freeman Agnifilo. Join us tomorrow night for that. Saturday with Ben Mycelis. And of course, you know where to find me. Till my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Shout out to the Midas Mighty and the Legal AFers. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.